Four, three, two, and one. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions Podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the deferred sales trust is an amazing way for you to exit highly appreciated assets, defer capital gains taxes, and really have some access to more freedom and flexibility with your capital. My name is Brett Swartz, and each and every episode, I'm joined by some of the best real estate and financial and wealth and business minds in the world, where they share their ideas, deal stories, and inspiration. So together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. I'm excited about our next guest. He's on a mission to help all of us make some more money with land. In fact, selling land without a ton of hassle and figure out ways to grow your wealth when you sell it, and so much more. And today we're going to be talking about just that, unveiling land loopholes for savvy investors. Please welcome to the show with me, Dan Haberkost. Dan, how are you doing?
Good. How are you, Brett?
I'm doing fantastic. Good to see you again. And for our listeners to get to know you, could you give us a little bit more about your story and your current focus?
Yeah, absolutely. So, quick background. I had my first experience with real estate at 16. I was managing a portfolio of rentals for my boss at the time while he'd go to Aruba, and I also took care of his farm. And in hindsight, he was definitely getting the best deal there. So did that through high school, worked full time in college while going to school. And when I was about 20 years old, I was a bit fed up with just doing nothing other than work and school. Didn't get to have a whole lot of fun in college. It was just those two things. And so I said, all right, well, I've been managing people since I was a teenager, so I'm sure I can take this experience and apply it to some sort of business once I graduate, to put myself ahead as an adult, because it is what it is. Didn't get to have fun in college, but can't do anything about it. So I started reading different books about businesses and equities and investing, and like everyone else, Rich Dad, Poor Dad was like the light bulb moment. And so I went out and bought a duplex at 21 as a house hack, moved to Colorado from Ohio, where I'm from originally, and bought another house hack. And it was right around that time that I realized, hey, the low and no money down stuff is great for selling books and courses and maybe one or two house hacks. But the reality is, if you want to buy a lot of real estate, you need to figure out how to make or raise a lot of money. And so at a local real estate meetup here in Colorado, which I actually host now, I met a guy who'd been doing land and development for the last 40 years. And every weekend I drive an hour south down to Pueblo, West Colorado, for anyone who knows where that is, help him with his new construction projects, help him any way I could, learn from him. And eventually we started doing deals together. I started participating in the new builds, helping, having an equity stake, and then sourcing land for the builds. And that's where Front Range Land ultimately came from. So fast forward to today, I have a giant marketing funnel going direct to seller for land, buy it anywhere from 30 to 70 cents on the dollar. A lot of it is just wholesale to retail where we buy and sell it. A few at a time, I'll put new construction on, maybe do some small subdivisions, small aggregations, that sort of thing. But ultimately, it all starts going direct to seller with land and buying it at a discount. And so that's Front Range Land. And then I've been continually buying rental properties since as well.
Fantastic. By the way, you can learn more about Dan right now by going to frontrangeland.com. That's frontrangeland.com. Dan, let's dive right into the topic at hand, which is unveiling land loopholes for savvy investors. So, Dan, what's the number one secret to doing just that?
Probably the biggest thing that most people don't realize with the buying and selling of the land, I'm not paying capital gains taxes. I think you and I talked about this last week, where talk to your accountant for the exact amount, but once you're doing enough transactions, you become a dealer, and it's just taxed as ordinary income. It's not capital gains with all the buying and selling. And so that's one thing that most people don't realize.
Okay, excellent. And if you're looking to make that makes sense. We'll touch on that later here on a few ways to solve for that. We have a solution for that if it's a large enough transaction, except if you're not a dealer. Okay, so a couple of technical things there, but back up a little bit more, I guess. So you move from house hacking to sounds like buying and doing deals with a partner to basically maybe exclusively, or tell us now, like, I mean, just buying land and doing land deals. Give us the biggest secret to that versus, the traditional multifamily syndication route, or the traditional, fix and flip, and just, churning those deals. What is it about land loopholes that makes it so attractive for what you're doing?
Let me make a few distinctions. land, going back to the early stage of that story after I'd bought a couple rentals, is the way to generate it's the cash printing machine for me. Because then in the separate bucket are my investments. So I'm continually buying buildings. I close on a fourplex next week, right? So front range land is my means for scaling my income dramatically to then go buy more and more nice long-term assets. And then those assets also help reduce my tax burden. I just did a bunch of cost sakes. So probably the biggest thing about land is it's just underappreciated. It's very inefficient. I remember reading about that concept, 7, 8, 9 years ago when I was first getting into investing about efficient versus inefficient markets. And land is incredibly inefficient. People don't know how to price it. It's not well understood. It's not like apartments. I would think of apartments being like the equities of real estate, where trying to go buy a stock tomorrow at a discount is very hard, right? People do it, but it's not simple. Apartments are that way. It takes a lot of effort or a big value add. Whereas land, going to buy it at a discount is very, relatively speaking, easy. There are mispricings everywhere. There are opportunities everywhere. It's kind of more the blue ocean of real estate because it's just not well understood.
Wow, I think that's a great insight there, right? So it seems like it's almost like you got an insider's edge
Mhm.
when it comes to real estate investing if you choose land because of what you just said. It's not easily understood how to price it. It's
Mhm.
often misunderstood, and it's inefficient for transactions versus, let's say, multifamily, which has financing readily available,
Yes,
and it's
yes.
very easy to understand. And so, what's the next, kind of secret to unveiling land loopholes if you're a savvy investor and you want to make some money with land?
Picking a niche, because land is a massive umbrella, right? It's really, really broad. And so for me, going back to how I learned about it initially, we were building new construction on simple infill lots. And so, guys, for anyone that doesn't know what that means, think about you're walking down the street in an established neighborhood. There's two houses, but there's still a vacant lot between the two houses. That's what I mean by infill. Water, sewer, power are all right there, or you can put in well and septic easily, right? Entitlements are done. There's nothing you have to do other than get your plans, engineering, and go get the permit. You don't have to go and do a long process to get to the point where you're even allowed to put, a house or an apartment there. It's already zoned, entitlements are in place. So that's been my niche primarily. And I watch friends of mine building here in Colorado Springs where they might take 2 years before they get a permit because there's so much that has to be done. Whereas the builds I've done down there, I 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe, a couple $1,000 to get the engineering and plans done, and I've got a permit for a new construction. So that's been my niche. Granted, if you take the time to figure out how to take raw land, totally different, and get it to that stage where it's ready to be built on, that could be a whole nother niche where you can make a lot of money. So just trying not to ramble here, pick a specific niche within land because beyond what I just described, there's all kinds of land for recreation. Or I was just in San Diego. There's a massive life science community there, and they need land for new buildings, right? That's a huge industry, the life sciences space. I was talking to a guy, and they're looking for land in Riverside for new buildings. You could, connect the people that need that land with the land and make a big spread in the middle. So there's a million niches. Pick one, get really good at it, and don't try and do everything.
Okay, I think that's key here, right? And so, and by the way, you can learn more about Dan and Haberkost. I'm going to spell for you. It's Haberkost, and it's frontrangeland.com, frontrangeland.com to get connected with them right now. So it sounds like pick a niche. That makes sense, right? And I think it sounds like your niche is very, simplifying it. There's two houses, right, on the same street, and in between those two houses, there's a vacant lot, right? So the sewer's there, the water's there, the power's there, the zoning's there. In other
Yes.
words, all of the things that hold up and make land inefficient to build, you're
Mhm.
just saying, you know what, I'm not even going to focus on all of that right now. I'm going to focus on where it's ready to go, and I'm going to try to make a deal to buy that lot and then build on that lot. Is that a fair summary on your particular niche?
Yes, yes. And on many of these, we just flip them to builders, right? I'm only doing a few new construction projects at a time.
Excellent. And so by that, give us the average deal, maybe a deal that you've done recently or just an average deal. What does that look like? And how do the numbers turn out?
Sure. So easy example. We're getting one, should have it under contract today or tomorrow at 36. This is in Florida, one of the hotter parts of Florida, and that should sell at 60-ish. I bet it, and guys, just a quick aside, I go after very competitive but easy to sell markets as opposed to some people go to very easy to buy but hard to sell. I like the opposite. So this specific sort of lot in this market will go under contract in 5 or 10 days. So we'll list it, probably at 65. I bet it'll sell at 59 to 60, and it'll close probably 40 to 45 days after I initially bought it at 36 plus closing costs. So my basis will be like 37,200. We'll sell it at 60-ish. After realtor fees and everything, there'll be, I'm trying to do math in my head, which is challenging on a podcast, but there'll be like 18 or 20 grand in that one, right? And that'll take 45 days. Granted, there's a big marketing funnel and a long follow-up process to get that deal, but once closed, these deals move like this. It's crazy in the Southeast.
That's fantastic. Okay, so you're buying it, you're making about 18 to 20K. And then the big question, obviously, someone would say, well, why doesn't that person just list the land themselves, Dan? Like, or why don't they just, why don't they just hire the realtor to do the thing? Walk us through how you're qualifying and finding these folks who are raising their hand, who want to know hassle-free close, who want to just quickly be done with the land. Like, walk us through some of those secrets.
So it's incredibly important that any asset or business you're starting, if you're going to do marketing of any kind, you need to figure out who you're marketing to. You got to build out that customer, that avatar. And so this is where a lot of people go wrong in land. They come from house wholesaling, where they're going after distressed single family. I have done hundreds of deals all over the country, all direct to seller, and the vast majority of them are not distressed. They're more apathetic. And let me give you an example, a conversation I just had from my personal life that paints the picture perfectly. My parents are in their 60s, and they just sold their new-ish car because they wanted a truck, and they were just consolidating to one vehicle. I was talking to my dad, and he goes, yeah, and we just traded the Subaru in. And I go, Dad, you could have got a lot more. Go sell it on Facebook or Craigslist. He goes, we're tired. We just wanted convenience. That is the seller. They're financially comfortable. They're tired. They don't want to put the effort in. They're more apathetic than they are distressed. And occasionally we get distressed deals, but I'd say it's like 90-10, where 90% fit the description of my dad selling his car or trading in his car.
I think that's great. It's a great analogy. That's so true. I remember telling my dad, this is about maybe 10 years ago, I told him how I drove across town to make some like, some shopping for something, right? And I was like, oh, Dad, I made this deal on this thing. And I remember him kind of laughing. And he goes, Brett, one day you won't drive across town. You'll just pay full price.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, oh, I thought he would be like proud of me for making the deal. And I mean, he'd proud of me for making the bigger deal on something, right? But something
Yeah.
like that, he's like, Brett, your time and your energy at a certain point, Brett, you just want, and so it's the apathy, that makes sense. People just want, and they make sense. I mean, they've worked so hard for so much in the years prior, that now it's more about seamless, stress free. Okay, great. So you're marketing to that specific avatar, makes sense, and then you're approaching them with a seamless transaction, and then but you're seeing, that there's value there. That, hey, I think I can turn this around. Are you doing anything to the land besides marketing it in a way to attract the contractor or the ultimate end user? What are you doing in between there, if anything, to turn around and make that $20,000 profit?
Most of the time, nothing. It's just moving from the wholesale side to having it exposed on the MLS to the full market. Working on some small subdivides. There's a deal we're trying to lock up. Been working this one forever. Eastern or El Paso County, which is Colorado Springs, where we would do a small minor subdivision. So working to layer in some of those. But other than the simple new construction, most of it is just wholesale to retail.
I love it, Dan. I think it's fantastic. Okay, great. So we talked about a few different things, right? Picking the niche. We talked about understanding that land is underappreciated and inefficient, and figuring out ways to do that. Some marketing. What else comes to mind here as you're trying to scale this, right? Because I mean, it seems like at a certain point you got to build that team and you got to try to scale this. Like, walk us through how you're doing so many transactions and making it even more efficient on the business side.
So even before hiring, W-2 employees yourself or 1099, a great title agent is absolutely essential. I can't tell you how many deals we've gotten because we can put them on the phone with our attorney or title agent, depending on the state. So that is key because they'll also handle a lot of the transaction coordination for you. What we do, my acquisition managers, when they get a property under contract, they CC the title agent or attorney along with the seller. They say, hey, here's a new contract. Please start your work. Here's the seller. You'll take the communication moving forward. And we've set that expectation. And so once the seller is speaking to the escrow agent, right, the attorney or title company, it adds confidence that, hey, this is legitimate. This will go through. It kind of eases their mind, and then they do the work for us of all the transaction coordination. So that's really helpful. And then once you start hiring, man, this is somewhere I'm trying to get better, but you've got to have properly incentivized and trained acquisition managers, because that's the main point of skill in this business. Other than there's some needed on the data side, but most of the other work getting done is just administrative, right? And so you've got to be able to hire exceptional salespeople. And I'm getting better there. I have 2 people doing acquisitions right now, and then their incentives need to be aligned with yours, and they've got to have clear systems and SOPs on how to do everything. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, that's great, Dan. Fantastic. I love the way you're leveraging the strategic alliance with the title company, which inherently brings that I think more confidence for folks. It makes sense. And then you're getting it under contract, and then you're passing it over there to help them to push the deal forward. And in a sense, push the paperwork forward, right? The deal has already kind of been made, but it creates that more seamless versus you having to do it all yourself.
Yeah.
That's really smart. Okay, great. So now anything else that we haven't touched on that you want to touch on this? This has really been awesome. Unveiling land loopholes for savvy investors. How do people work with you, Dan? If people are like, hey, I like what Dan sounds like he's doing, and I want to invest. Do you offer people to invest with you? What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me make one other point. So before I'll hit on that, going back to our whole conversation about the seller avatar. So your marketing needs to be aligned. And so I just sent out mailers this morning that they have a Better Business Bureau logo at the top, and then our logo at the top left, right? Because we're signed up for the Better Business Bureau. And then they have our title agent, who's actually also an attorney in Florida, right on there, which is excellent. Hey, call her if you need any questions about our ability to close. And then it says, we'll send proof of funds and put up a non-refundable earnest money deposit. And I cannot tell you how many deals we have gotten because of that. So I just wanted to make that point, because that is so aligned with that seller avatar that wants easy, quick sale, but they need legitimacy, right? They're sick of the fake people that have no money, just trying to assign their lot. And so many of our deals come from people who fell out of contract with someone who couldn't close. So wanted to make that point about the seller avatar.
I think that's a great point, by the way. Okay, so you're putting even on the marketing, Better Business Bureau, the title agent they can call right now, and also we'll send proof of funds. So shows kind of I guess the 3 either biggest objections or the fears or the biggest things that they're going to be concerned with, right? Are they legit? Yeah, Better Business Bureau. Hope that gives them legitimacy. Also, the title company, right? It gives them legitimacy, and then also the fear of is it a scam, right? Because it's an actual title company that's going to handle the money. And the last thing being that that you guys are legit, right? And you guys will put up a non-refundable deposit. I think that's a great approach, and it keeps it really simple. Okay, great. So then the next part here. Yeah, we were saying, what was the other question before? I said something. I kind of forgot it.
Yeah, so I can answer it. You were asking where do I take investors, where to get in touch with me. So
yeah.
danhaberkost.com or on the social links, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. And then if you have a land deal where you need a capital partner, go to, Ground Up Partners is my other venture where we're providing capital for land deals. So you go to gupland.com and submit your deal, and we'll take a look at it and potentially partner with you and bring the capital.
Perfect. Awesome. So now let's shift a little bit into capital gains tax. I know I said we would touch on this, which is, the 1031 exchange. Sometimes it's frustrating, especially if you are a dealer, right? Because you no longer qualify for the 1031 exchange. Plus, 1031 exchanges means you have to hold it for a year or more, right, to establish the long term. But if you're doing for the less, it becomes taxable. There's a little niche in between there. There are those that are not holding it for a year or more, and there are those that are also not dealers and insert the deferred sales trust. So if people want to defer capital gains taxes, we did a couple of these deals in Texas, 46 million in total land exits. They tied the land up, they improved the land, and then they sold the land all within a year, but they weren't doing so many transactions that they became a dealer. They used the deferred sales trust to defer that ordinary income tax. So if anyone's listening to this, you can do that. The 1031 exchange does not solve that, but a deferred sales trust does, and it works for land flips and or kind of like land banking in the sense that you're tying it up, you're improving it, and then you're selling it for a profit in a short period of time. You can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Dan, what are your thoughts when you hear about that? And like what comes to mind for people who might be in the land business and or just any real estate business, but they're having huge capital gains taxes and they're tired of having to chase that next large transaction via the 1031 exchange, and they can diversify with the deferred sales trust?
Yeah, well, first of all, to your listeners, the strategy you just described is an excellent way to make money in land, right? Finding that end user, the big builder, a moderate sized builder who only wants a fully entitled and ready to go parcel, and then going and doing that work. You can make a ton of money doing that. Number two, no, I think that's excellent. I've been doing cost segregation on some of my buildings to help save in taxes, but if I were doing the strategy that you just described and I commented on, I would absolutely, DST sounds like the way to go.
Absolutely. And for the cost seg, by the way, I'm curious, are you using that to offset the ordinary income taxes on the dealer side of it?
Yep.
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 Yeah, so the passive and or the active, because you are a real estate professional, meaning that you're basically spending 750 hours or more in the full time of real estate investing, is kind of a general rule there. And or your spouse is doing that if in case you have a different job. You can look that up as well. Look up cost segregation and or real estate professional. That will help each of you who are listening to this to defer capital gains taxes and or offset ordinary income tax potentially, but check with your CPA. Every circumstance is a little bit different. Dan, that being said, we are running out of time. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Knowing what you know now, if you could go back to your 20-year-old self, what's the one gold nugget make sure to tell yourself to do?
Don't try and invest till you figure out how to make money. Focus entirely on scaling your income and then just buy nice assets.
Excellent. What percentage of your income, or what's the goal here, right? Coming from passive versus active, or is there kind of a ratio that you like to use with like, hey, I want to make X amount this year, and this percentage I want to go towards investing in something that's going to be more passive?
Oh gosh, I'm probably putting 60 or 70% of it towards buying more rentals.
Excellent. And are you focusing on like 4 units and below so you can get the residential financing and fix it for long term? And where are you buying right now?
Colorado, I've kept the rentals here locally. And for now, but we're working on some bigger ones. I've got another couple buildings going up that I'm just going to keep as far as new construction. But in the long run, I want to move to the commercial side of things.
Do you do third party management for those small rentals, or are you still doing those in house?
Management, yeah. Oh, I hired a girl from my real estate group to manage them. So yeah.
Do you feel like Colorado is becoming more and more challenging as it pertains to owning real estate, more like a California with the restrictions and such? Or what's your long-term kind of outlook for Colorado real estate?
Well, the more it gets like California, the more it'll push the prices up. Everything the government does just makes it more expensive, so that's fine. And then this is why I stick with nice rentals in nice areas where all my tenants have at least a 700 credit score. And then it's amazing you don't have these problems. So I won't touch, especially the longer I do this, man, I want B plus or better, buildings younger than me. That's it. That's it. So,
I
yep.
love it. I love it. Next question. What's the number one way you're using Chat GPT?
Man, I haven't used it at all. So I'm probably falling short there because I know but I really haven't used it at all.
Fair enough. What's the number one book you've recommended or given the most in the past year?
Oh, Same as Ever. I forget the author, but I read Same as Ever recently, and I flipped to page one and read it again. It talks about amongst all the change we're seeing, AI, of course, everyone's scared of. What are the things that never change? And so much of it pertains to human nature, but it is excellent and makes a lot of good points. I would read that one.
Excellent. Next question. Number one leadership quote or theme that you strive to live by?
Leadership specifically, man, I have some quotes that come to mind. Oh man, leaders. This is a hard one.
It can be a theme too. It doesn't have to be just like an exact quote. It can be a theme.
Yeah, okay. I was reading a article from Howard Marks where he said how much optimism is factored into the price, and I believe that was the title of the article. And that has really stuck with me in the world of investing, especially when you catch yourself getting FOMO or following the herd. How much optimism is factored into the price? It's just a useful question.
Yeah, it's actually, in fact, the best questions are typically the best ways to be a good leader, asking the right questions at the right time. I love that. Second to last question. What are you most curious about right now?
What am I most curious about? Yeah, that's a good one. Within the context of business, how to effectively, after a couple more residential acquisitions, go after triple net buildings, like small strip centers, that sort of thing.
Excellent. Love it. Last question. After all your success, helping all the people you helped, and growing your wealth at a young age and being an entrepreneur here, how do you best stay centered in your values, but also stay encouraged to charge forward to reach even higher heights and higher goals?
Just surrounding yourself with the right people, people who, number one, having a lot of people who are far ahead of you definitely keeps you humble. But also people who are in business but haven't gotten, let that change their ego or how they act. I think so. It's the people you're around, I think, is most effective at doing that.
Fantastic. Hey, Dan, I want to thank you on the show. And thank you for sharing a ton of wisdom with us, a ton of insights on how to on basically make money with land, right? And looking for ways to grow even marketing or business ideas, right? You shared a ton of wisdom with us today. I want to thank you for that. I want to encourage you to keep using that gift to help people and create and preserve more wealth. For our listeners who want to get in touch with you, would you remind them one last time what's the best place for them to find you?
danhaberkost.com or on any of the socials. And a reminder too, the Big Picture Blueprint is my podcast, and Brett was just on it. So check it out if you want to hear about land and business in general.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. And I also want to thank our listeners for listening to the episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. Also streaming expert CRE secrets as well. And we want to thank you for all watching on YouTube or listening on the Apple podcast or other places that podcasts are consumed. If you could rate, review, subscribe, that'd be really helpful. And remember that the enemy is not having a clear plan and building a team and having strategies to help you create and preserve more wealth, such as something like land investing with someone like Dan, and or using the deferred sales trust as a way to exit highly appreciated assets will help you to defer capital gains tax, create and preserve more wealth. You can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to learn more about that, or check out also our new book called Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. And it's a proven playbook for unlocking your ideal wealth plan when selling multi-million-dollar assets of any kind, businesses, real estate, it could be cryptocurrency, to defer that tax so you can create and preserve more wealth and perhaps do some more land deals with someone like Dan. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast.